Okay, family, it's time to discuss that oh so pertinent topic that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. I told you that we were losing our African American youth. And there's a lot of things, of course, that we're losing them to: crime, incarceration, the educational divide. But the particular loss that I am referencing today is where they're losing their blackness. They no longer value it, if at any point they ever did, as they should have. And this is a real issue. There may be many listeners out there that's saying, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist and that isn't true. But it is. And if you have those serious conversations with your children, then you'll see that it's something that they certainly deal with, especially in the school environment. I've spoken to many parents who deal with convincing their children that how they look is okay, and the way their hair looks is okay, and their features are okay, their shade of skin is fine. But for whatever reason, something has convinced these children that in order to be accepted, in order to be pretty, in order to be perceived as smarter or friendlier, they have to look a certain way. And they're not necessarily identifying with, I have to look white, but I have to look lighter, or my hair has to be straighter, or my features, have to look a certain way. I've spoken to a couple of kids, and parents as well, who are battling this issue. And let me just give you a few scenarios. I spoke to one kid who told me that now she goes to school in around the Charlottesville surrounding county area. And she told me that it was in middle school when she first started to deal with this. And she said what kind of sparked this idea was the way that boys responded to her. Okay, for whatever reason, they said without a problem, I don't care for black girls. I don't like black girls. I like white girls. And so then she starts to ask herself, well, what's wrong with me? So she started to do things like straighten her hair to make it look long and flowing, and wish that she was lighter when she was around her peers and things like that. I've spoken to a gentleman who was light skinned, who kind of had it was the reverse effect. He was invited to go to participate with an organization he's biracial, but the organization is, I guess, created originally for pure or thoroughbred, or however you want to word it, African American males. So for him, he didn't want to go because the way he looked, or his light skinnedness, excluded him from being in that. Last situation I'll tell you about is I spoke to a mom who is from the South, brought her daughter here. She went to one of the local schools, and she said she had one of her peers tell her that she was so black that she couldn't be seen at night. Now, mind you, this is coming from one black person to another black person, and it messed her up. And they actually changed schools because of it, but she's still dealing with all the same issues. She didn't have this problem when they were down south. But here, her daughter feels like the way she looks isn't good enough. So how did we get here? I don't know. I don't know if it goes back to the Willie Lynch theory, light skin against dark skin, house slave against, field slave. I don't know. Is it lack of education? I don't know, but I have some guests here: Yolonda Jones, Whitney Hinnant, Kai Millner. They're all going to speak to me about what they feel may be the issue and how we can help it, because we certainly don't want this watered down generation of African Americans that we are beginning to get. We want them to be proud of who and what they are. So I will go to Yolonda first. Yolonda, how did we get here? What happened to make our kids feel like they aren't good enough, that black isn't beautiful?
Man, I feel like that's a loaded question. And much of what you said, I think is true. I don't know how legitimate the whole Willie Lynch scenario is, as far as it being an actual thing that happened. I do know that there's a good bit of legitimacy to the phenomenon, to the house Negro versus the field Negro, and just the colorism and the competition between, you know, those individuals who perceive themselves as being favored in the community versus those that are not. And I think that that's what it stemmed from. When you go back to chattel slavery, you can go back that far. As far as bringing it to today, I think that the messaging is what influences our children. They're in a world, and I also want to say with this, I think that there is, the tide is changing. The movement towards self-love and appreciation for differences, I feel, is gaining momentum just with the power of social media and people, standing up and making claims and asserting our legitimacy and our beauty as people of all different colors, but especially compensating for people who have not felt that in the past. So speaking about, brown skinned people, darker skinned people, people with hair texture that's not as curly or as fine. There are celebrations, there are artists who are in various arenas who are celebrating that more. And so it's becoming, I feel some momentum gaining, but I do feel like we still have a long way to go. But I think that messaging has helped to sort of, and from the time that children come into the world, or the time that they enter into school systems where they have toys to play with that do not reflect, and they don't see themselves reflected in the doll babies, in the storybooks and the poems and the nursery rhymes. And so you don't see that. It's not being reinforced. You're taught very early that the default thing is not what you actually are. And so, that I think that's what it begins that early.
Whitney, I'll have you chime in on this. You work in the local school system.
Right.
Am I fair in my assessment of what's happening with our youth? And then what are your thoughts on the topic?
So I think that it can present itself different ways in different spaces. I think to be cultivated and to grow in a black space, in a black school, is one thing. I think there's a greater understanding there. I think there's more support there. Even sometimes if those that are educating you don't exactly look like you, your peers look like you, and so there's a commonality in that space. I teach at a primarily Caucasian school. We have, I believe, 482 students, and I believe that about less than 30 are African American. And so I'm frequently asked, like, why would you be in that space? Well, why are you there? Well, I'm there because I feel like people that look like me and students that look like me need to see me. I had the privilege of being educated in a school similar, and there were strong black women in positions that I needed in order to see my blackness and to have hope and to really be able to embody love. And I think that what Yolonda said was really pertinent. I think that we are seeing a change and a shift because of social media. And depending on where you are on the spectrum, it depends on which way you're shifting. And so I think that social media has opened up the world in various ways, but specifically for high schoolers in general, or some of the stories that you spoke of, like right now, Snapchat, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Snapchat, is a very popular social media, and they have these amazing filters that everybody loves, and you can press your face, and everybody's probably seen the dog one where people are like poking out their tongues, and one of them they presented about a month ago for Coachella. And it gives you a flower crown around your head, and it lightens your skin and gives you lighter eyes no matter what your skin tone is. And so I read an article recently that talked about, like, what is that saying to people who are darker skinned, that only those that are lighter skinned possess this type of beauty? Because it's not like it's a gradient thing. It's not just clearing up your skin or whatever. It's actually shifting your skin tone. And so I think in that way, that's hard. Because the reflection of what beauty looks like and whether you can be accepted in a certain space, when your social media is doing it and you just want to take your blemishes away, it's kind of crazy, And so I think that in itself is having an impact on especially older kids. My sister is in high school currently, and I hear them talk about all kind of things related to who they are and what they see and who the people are that are impacting them and influencing them in their blackness. But with little kids, I think that for me personally, the space that I work in, I'm the only African American teacher at my school. We have 3 African American TAs beyond me. And in my space, it's a space that we have to be inclusive. It's a space that I refuse to not allow children to see people of other faiths, of other backgrounds, ethnicities. And so, we learn about Black history all year round, but that's in my space. And I'm only one, out of the 30 teachers that are there. And so I think that has an impact on children, because my kids could go through from kindergarten to 5th grade, and some of them will never have a teacher of color because I'm the only Black teacher there. And so I think that's impactful. And I think, like you said, changing the narrative, like Yolanda said, being able for them to see themselves. I have books about everybody. We learn about everybody. We're celebrating everybody's holiday, whether it's an Indian holiday, an Islamic holiday, no matter what it is. We just need to be able to see ourselves and reflect the good, I think.
Kai, I'll ask you a question now because what grade are you in?
I'm going to graduate soon, but I'm a senior.
Okay, all right. So you've had a few years of high school. Well, you've completed your school years.
Yes.
Tell me what you have experienced or saw with regard to this type of phenomenon that's happening among your peers.
Well, the main thing that I see is almost, I guess, relating to Willie Lynch and all that stuff. There seems to be a lot of, I guess, light skin versus dark skin, I guess. Not necessarily beef, but
beef.
Beef, yeah. Where people are so willing to align someone's personality and someone's beliefs and someone's emotions and their thoughts just to the shade of their skin. And I think that that's something that's really strange, that especially that happens so out in the open. If I go on Twitter and I look up light-skinned tweets, I could go find something. And if I go on Twitter right now and look up dark-skinned tweets, I could find something completely and totally different. So just the fact that people are so, accepting of those two stereotypes, and they're without any complaints, without any second thoughts, it sort of shocks me to see.
So let me ask you, since we have this young mind here that's kind of in it, if you had to kind of hypothesize, what's the problem here? Why is this happening? Why are we against one another? What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is something that's happened throughout all of history, throughout all of Black people. If you go back to the slavery days, especially in South America and the Caribbean, you can see I think the Brazilian caste system was 100% based off of what percent Black and what percent white you are. Or these are things that have been happening, but because has been said earlier, through the prevalence of social media and through all these all these arenas where it can be seen so clearly and so vividly, people have finally started talking about it really in depth.
All right. I think we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue this conversation, have Charles chime in as well. We'll be right back, in my humble opinion.